Hello and welcome to the 2024-2025 playoff preview for the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. I'm Dave Anthony, and this year's esteemed panel is about to break down each playoff series heading into this weekend's playoff kickoff. We're joined by the illustrious Darnell Duff of the Dauphin Kings, Kevin Pauls of the Niverville Nighthawks, and Cody Bueller of the Portage Terriers. Gentlemen, thanks for doing this. Let's start right out of the gate in the East. Kevin, with your series, Winkler versus Niverville. Hasn't gone Niverville's way in the regular season, but give us your thoughts as you get ready for game one on Friday.
Well, I mean, obviously the Winkler Flyers are top in the league in a number of categories. They're a big, strong, well-coached defensive team. They have a lot of pieces. They have a lot of depth. Just so many things going for the Winkler Flyers. But when the playoffs, everything kind of changes. It's a different style of game. There's a lot more coming to it. The coaches have a chance to realign things as far as strategy and planning towards it, and that's all fine and dandy until the puck drops. So it'll be interesting to see, how things go, how things play out, because obviously the Flyers have had the upper hand during the season. It's a tall task, make no bones about that. But anything can happen come playoff time, as we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you've brought up throughout the year, though, is if Niverville plays Nighthawks hockey, they have a chance. If they want to play Winkler Flyer hockey, that's where they're going to get into trouble like teams have all year. And Cody Bueller, we've seen that, with our respective clubs going up against Winkler a number of times this year. What makes the Flyers so dangerous in your mind?
Well, the thing, and we've seen it a lot whenever the Terriers have played them, is that they really come at you consistently with pressure the entire game. Defense have always got to be keeping their head on a swivel because the forecheck is coming in fast. They always have to be watching what's going on around them. The Winkler plays very physical style, but I think that Niverville's brand of hockey plays kind of a similar style of game that they play physical, they play in your face, and they like to mix it up. And I think that's going to be something that you're going to see a lot of that rough stuff after the whistle in round one, especially in that series. And it's going to be really which team can get the most offense and get the most out of their team.
Darnell, from out in the West, I'm sure you've kept an eye on what's been going on in this side of the division. You've seen Winkler kind of be able to run away and dominate throughout, but the Niverville Nighthawks have been a scrappy, hardworking team, and they've pulled off some wins, especially late in the year. That's going to help them build confidence. Just in your mind, how much does that underdog status the Nighthawks are bringing into this Flyer series? How much does that help Niverville going into round one?
I mean, I think it's a status that the Niverville Nighthawks can embrace. And I think this series really comes down, in my opinion, to the play of Austin Dubinsky. When the Nighthawks had a 7-game winning streak late in the season there, he was one of the best goalies statistically in the MJHL. Faltered at times down the stretch, but I think if Austin Dubinsky can play the way he can, I think the Nighthawks have a chance. I mean, with that being said, this is a Flyers team that is just unfazed. Liam Ernst has been outstanding. You look at their offensive core, and they've been through it. Some of their top players have been through the grind of winning a championship. Last year, Jace Legarden, he's back. He's leading their team. Nick McKee's having a great year. Brody Boscheman as well. So this is a very tall task for the Niverville Nighthawks. That goes without saying. But this is a Nighthawks team that is physical. They get up in your face. And I think, they're going to have to play pretty perfect hockey. It's going to be tough to beat the Flyers 4 times in a 7-game span. But I think the Nighthawks, if they play at their best, do have the abilities to do so.
Kevin Paul's voice of the Nighthawks. You've seen this team obviously grow throughout the year, and they've been playing a different brand of hockey lately. Is this group ready in their third year making the playoffs? Are they ready to take that next step and get to the second round? Or are you seeing enough positive steps late to see them really challenge against the Flyers this year? And how much pressure is on the Nighthawks maybe to get out of round one after 2 years of being knocked out in the first round?
Well, the second round and further is obviously the goal, the ultimate goal being the Turnbull Cup championship. And it's never going to be easy. In the past, they've had Steinbach. So, perennial winners, perennial championship teams with a high degree of skill. And this year is no small task unto itself. But there's a lot of faith within the organization. There's a lot of skill getting Adam Vigfuson back. Austin Dubinsky's been playing fantastic, getting Luke Wagner back in the fold along with Holden Getzlaff and the likes of Avery Laliberty. They've got a lot of strong pieces. There is a lot of depth there. And a wise man told me they play fast, heavy, and tenacious hockey. But Darnell made a good point there. It's going to have to be nearly perfect. The Winkler Flyers are top in the league in power play and penalty kill, top goaltending. And we've talked about their defense. So none of it is going to be easy. I think that the Nighthawks would rather have it any other way. Competing at the highest level is the ultimate goal, and they will be put to the test here, and it's going to be fun to watch. I'm pumped for it.
Cody, you've been a part of enough championship runs to know that depth wins at this time of year. And Winkler might be the deepest team up front and on the blue line in the entire MJHL. Just take us through your thoughts on 1 through 4 with the lines and then 1 through 6 on defense, and just how difficult it's going to be to break through. Even when some guys aren't having a good night, other guys seem to pick up the slack.
Well, and it was one of those things. The last game that I saw with Winkler was just a couple of weeks ago, actually. And you didn't even really notice which line was on the ice because they all came so fast and in waves. It was just consistent pressure, consistently hounding the puck. And so when you have that depth of just constantly rolling out lines, you're getting the same style. It just really forces the team to be perfect on the other end of the ice with those breakout passes, with all of that kind of thing. It's really the consistent pressure, especially on the penalty kill. And then the power plays looked really good as well. They're skating so fast, so hard. And that's really what I think is the key to success for the Winkler Flyers. It's, can Niverville get in behind their defense? Can they get those chances off the rush? Can they get maybe a couple of chances with a perfect breakout pass? It's the breakout passes that are going to be key. And one thing, when I was looking up some stats, I noticed that Winkler has 4 players above 60 points. And that's some pretty impressive depth. We've seen some teams with some guys, a 1 or 2 really high, but to have 4 players over 60 points, over that point of game threshold, and one of them being a defenseman, I look for Isaiah Peters to have a really good playoffs. I think he's a big linchpin on the back end for the Flyers.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be key for Niverville too. Let's say they go down one in, early part of game one, to not try and kick a field goal, not think that the next goal is going to count for 3, not get too far ahead of themselves, and or think that they're in too deep of a hole to dig themselves out of, because that's how teams end up getting buried against a club like the Winkler Flyers. Darnell Duff, your Dauphin Kings actually went into Winkler and won in Icon Arena later stages of this season. That's a tough building to play in. How much is home ice going to factor in with Winkler having it obviously throughout the playoffs?
Yeah, I think home ice is always beneficial. I mean, I as far as other seasons, I think Winkler's at a little bit of a handicap because it's not their traditional rink where they pack the stands with, in that range of 1,500 fans. It's still an outstanding atmosphere. I think the marketing guys do a great there of setting the tone and setting that atmosphere in Winkler. But I don't think their home ice advantage is going to be a factor as big as it has been in previous years. At the end of the day, wherever Winkler plays, whether it's on home ice or whether it's on the road, this is a gauntlet. This is the best team, one of the best teams in Canada all season long. So I don't think home ice advantage in their specific arena is going to matter as much as it has in past years. They're just going to be tough to beat. That's how good this hockey club is from top to bottom. Liam Ernst, Mello's done a fantastic job. It's crazy that Winkler won the championship last year and statistically a better team this year with more wins, 96 wins. They're going to be a tough out. I'm looking forward to watching them go to business.
Absolutely. We got playoff series predictions coming up, as well as we're going to pick a player we believe is going to have a breakout series. But before we get to that, we're going to do a new segment in our playoff previews called Final Random Thought. I'm just going to give it to each of you to share a thought that you've had either percolating in your brain for this series, or just anything that maybe has been drummed up through conversation that we've had here. Kevin Poles, we'll start with you. Your final random thought on the Winkler-Niverville series.
I think ultimately the Flyers are the Goliath in this series, and I think it's going to boil down to the Nighthawks believing in themselves and finding a way to win. And it's the last matchup they tried to play that hammer nail hockey that Winkler is so good at. I think it's going to be keeping sight of the goal, and sticking to the program. The coaches will obviously outline the strategies, and it'll be about following that to the letter for 60-minute hockey games for what ultimately could be a 7-game series, which is obviously with hockey is a hard thing to do, and why we see such disparity from skill levels at points. But I think there's a lot of X factors here that will most likely come into play, and it's going to be a battle, and I'm really stoked to see it.
Cody Bueller, your final random thought ahead of Winkler versus Niverville.
I think that if there's a team to beat Winkler in the first round, I think it's the Niverville Nighthawks. I think that the way they're built and the way that they play, they have a chance to do it. And so that's my random thought for this first round matchup. I think Niverville's got a pretty good chance.
Darnell Duff, your
My
final random thought.
Yeah, my question is, can Winkler live up to the hype? 96 points, first place in the MGHL. But you look back statistically over the past couple of years, the first place overall team has not gone on to win the championship. You go back to the 2022 playoffs. The Kings did not finish in first. The next year, the Pistons didn't finish in first. Last year, Winkler didn't finish in first. As you know, Dave Steinbach did. Winkler won the title. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of buzz around this Winkler team. But I think what comes with that is big pressure. So looking to see if they can live up to that great hype.
For me, it's early on in the series. Niverville needs to put that seed of doubt in the mind of Winkler. They need to be that little gnat that just kind of keeps chipping away at the iceberg. And Darnell, like you said, there is a lot of pressure, but Winkler is the top of the mountain for a reason. They're a good, deep team, physical team built for playoff hockey. So Niverville, like you said, needs to play perfect, but they need to put that seed of doubt into the minds of the Flyers somewhat early in that series, whether it's on the road in game one or defending home ice in game two. Let's do our series predictions, starting with Kevin Pauls of the Niverville Nighthawks. Kevin, your thoughts on this series?
Well, it's an interesting one for me, living closer to Winkler and knowing a lot of the players. There's good men on both sides of this battle who I'm very fond of. Obviously, working for the Niverville Nighthawks, there's a lot of emotion and stuff behind it as well, too. Having, ample opportunities to talk with coaches and players, and man, I have a lot of gratefulness towards that organization. In this case, it's going to be a tall task. Conventional thinking leads towards the Winkler Flyers, but as you guys know all too well, I'm anything but conventional. So I'm going to go with the Niverville Nighthawks in this one in 7, and I hope it's a drag them out banging classic here ahead of us. And yeah, that's what I'm going to go with, the Nighthawks in 7.
Cody Bueller, your predictions.
Well, I've already said I think that Niverville has a chance, and I think they'll make it a series. But I do think that Winkler is too tough of a team for them to upset in the first round. I do think the Flyers are a really good club, and the way they play, I think it's going to be Flyers in 6.
Darnell Duff, your thoughts?
Now, I think Niverville is going to wear down Winkler. They're going to come out hard, but the Flyers with this week off, I think they're going to be rested. They're going to be fired up. They're going to come into this. If Winkler falters at all, I think it's going to be later on in the playoffs. I think the Nighthawks give them a good battle, but it is the Flyers in 6 winning this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Winkler in 5. I'm gonna give Niverville one of the games at the CRRC. It just seems to me that Winkler, even when they go down, and they've gone down 2-0 throughout the regular season, they've somehow found a way to get back into it. There's no panic in that group. They're a very mature group. They're more together now this year than they were last year. Darnell, you kind of pointed that out, that they're a better team statistically this season than they were last year when they won, but they're more together. There's more buy-in. I just feel like Winkler's just going to be too consistently for the Nighthawks. Kevin, I'd love for you to get to 7 games, but I got Winkler in 5. So let's go with a player that you think is going to have a breakout series on either side. Kevin Pauls, who's a guy that you would like to see get some spotlight and get some attention?
Well, it's easy to pick for the Nighthawks, a guy like Adam Vigdusson. He's been so great for the Nighthawks all year, coming back from injury and, getting red hot here, scoring, 4 or 5 goals in his last few games, which is spectacular. I'd really like to see Avery Laliberty get some spotlight. He's a guy that just goes quietly about his work, and here's a big stage against arguably the best decor in the league. And I think Avery Laliberty can play with anybody. So those are a couple that I look forward to watching.
All right, Cody, Darnell, from the outside, it's easier for us to kind of pick an X factor, I think. Cody, who is your X factor in this series, Winkler versus Niverville?
Well, I kind of mentioned it before. I'm looking for a good series from Isaiah Peters. I think as a defenseman, he's going to be a big part of the offense, but also the defense for them. And so I think he's a player who's looked good, and I think he'll be a big part of this series.
Darnell Duff, your X factor.
Yeah, I might be a little bit biased on mine, but I've followed this guy being from Grandview for a few years when he played with the Parkland U18 Rangers. A great year, won a championship last year. I think Jace Lee Garden is destined for some pretty great things. Had 69 points in the regular season. There's a lot of guys on this Winkler team that are decorated and can produce, but I think Lee Garden's going to certainly lead their charges as far and take them as far as they can go.
I'm going to take the easy way out. Darnell, you already said the name earlier. Austin Dubinsky. He's going to face somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 shots, most likely per game. He's going to have to be perfect on the penalty kill. He's going to have to be the best penalty killer, as most goalies are. And he is going to be the difference. If he can stand up, and he has throughout the year, that will definitely kind of even things out in the series, because if Winkler can't find the back of the net, you can't win a hockey game. So it's going to be on Austin Dubinsky. Gentlemen, that is your Winkler versus Niverville preview.